Ladies and gentlemen, today is August 24th, 2016, and this is the KNKL Show, episode 307, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Keenan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to another show. Today we are going to be talking about giving up on a piece. Giving up on a piece, and what the heck could I possibly be talking about? Well, guys, I'm so sick of this ribbon piece. I tried my best, but in the end, I was not able to make it happen. So we're just going to be moving on to other things. No, just kidding. Of course we're not. We're finishing it up today, but we're going to be talking about how giving up on a piece, also known as taking a break, right? Realizing when you're at your wit's end and you need to walk away from your problem, can actually aid in the completion of your piece. And we got an interesting story about that. But before we get into the actual tutorial and story for today, we need to take a stroll down the love lane. So journey with me, if you will, to tinyurl/KNKL fanart and click this amazing cryptic link called See All, and then be dazzled as you are treated. Your eyes are treated by the amazing submissions, by you guys out there. And thank you guys so much for submitting your art to the KNKL Facebook. If you would like to get featured on the show, just head on over here, like the page, submit your art, and you will be on next week's show. And by the way, I just had to say thank you to whoever submitted this awesome Beetlejuice art. I totally forget that girl's name. I think it's Lydia. Was it Lydia? Anyway, that's an awesome callback to an amazing series. I loved Beetlejuice. Loved Beetlejuice. All right, guys. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and get into today's tutorial. Okay, so as you can see, there was a lot of stuff that happened here, right? Going from this to this, this to this. And there's a lot of rendering, and I'm very happy with the final result. However, what we're talking about today is the fact that it was not easy to get to this point. I struggled, and I nearly gave up. I nearly was about to like shut this thing to the side and say, you know what, I suck. I'm getting old. I don't know what's happening. I'm losing my mind. I can't do this anymore, right? Which is a normal thing. Do not be afraid of having such thoughts. I'm sure you guys have had similar thoughts. Thoughts of inadequacy, thoughts of insufficiency, and all that stuff. We're going to go ahead and speed up this time lapse, and let's talk about that. Okay, so originally, this is where we left off last week, by the way. So if you'd like to go back and see how we got to this point, then just go ahead and click on this picture right here. I'll take you back a week. You can see how we actually got to this point. We learned about masking, coloring lines, getting stuff ready for what we are doing in the time lapse, and that is overpainting. But of course, can't necessarily go straight to this point. Well, actually, some people can, and it's something that I want to get better at doing. But that is another story for about 5 minutes from now. Okay, so we're having some fun. We are laying this out. We're trying to get our lighting set up, but unfortunately, Riven is looking like she swallowed a glow bug already because her cheeks and her chin are somehow literally being illuminated by some unknown magical force. And the reason that this is happening is because I don't know what the heck I'm doing. I'm working with a lighting source or a lighting scheme that I'm not very comfortable with, something that I haven't done a lot. And that is the strange lighting scheme that's happening where we have two diagonal light sources coming at Riven's face. The sunlight hitting the sand, right? And then reflecting back up onto her face from the underside. And then we have the skylight, the ambient blue skylight, hitting her hair and the top of her skin. Right? And this is like such a crazy thing, right? This is the stuff that I wanted to get better at. And so therefore, I am struggling with it and, and I'm choking on it. Literally choking just thinking about it. And we're having a good time with that. But regardless, the reason why I'm putting this in here is because I want you guys to see how this goes from bad to worse. How this actually gets to a point where I start involving myself in, or I get caught in the trap of sunk cost bias, or in this case, it's going to be sunk time bias. And that is, I'm sitting here working on this for hours. Sitting here working on painting this face for hours. It was at the end of the day. I had already finished my work for Riot, and it was like 8 or 9 o'clock, and I really wanted to get back to work on the ribbon piece. And so it's 8 or 9 o'clock. I do my best work in the morning, so I'm struggling already. I set myself up to kind of like fail in that point. And yeah, I'm just now trying to paint this face, but it's just not looking right. And worst of all, I'm not taking breaks. Not taking breaks because I'm like, no, I'm feeling it right now. I'm in the zone. I don't need to take a break. I don't need to take a step back and look at everything from the wide angle. You know, I got this. I got this down. And so I end up kind of doing this thing. I try to just like fix the colors. I'm trying to fix a million problems at the same time. And what ends up happening is Riven's face ends up looking like this. Ah! Oh man. Okay. So if you couldn't tell, there was quite a jump there. And the reason why there was a jump is because I got so angry that I deleted the time lapse. I deleted the time lapse of how I even got to this ugly face. And I was ready to call it quits. I was ready to throw the piece away and be like, you know what? I'm sick of this drawing. It's not turning out the way that I wanted to, right? I was jumping up and down. I was like throwing pillows against the wall. You know, I was so ticked off. And, but luckily I caught the very end of it, right? So you can see how ugly this piece actually ended up being. Like, look at her. She looks like a freaking, looks like a low contrast, like witch face. Like, it's not at all. See, I'm comparing back and forth. I'm like, oh no. Ugh. And at this point, I've been going for like 4 or 5 hours without resting, like sweat's like pouring down my face. I'm just like, no, I gotta make it work. I gotta make it work. It's like right across the finish line, or I'm right at the finish line. If I just go a little bit further, it's all gonna be fine. It's all gonna be fine, right? Things are darkest before the dawn, right? I'm telling myself to be positive and all this stuff, and then eventually I just sit back and I'm just like, this piece sucks, man. I gotta start over again. I gotta start over again. And this is something that is very natural to do. And speaking of natural, check this out. There's a Mika piece right there sneaking in. Why is that there? Well, that is because, okay, so this piece was another piece that was on my mind. And I was having this issue of like, man, I feel like I want to be able to sculpt faces with just color, because I feel like oftentimes I'm refining my line art and I like the face that's in the line art, and oftentimes I try to preserve that. Remember, I always tell you guys about that. But what I want to get better at doing is almost like sculpting a face in 3D space with color. And I'll be talking a little bit about this, so don't worry. But the point is that I had this piece on my mind the whole time I was working on Riven. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up a little bit. But having that thought, or having like inspiration to do another piece, or like a feeling that I needed to do another exercise that would help me out, was something that I should have jumped on. I should have followed that intuition, the artist's intuition, to do that, because that would have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of time in the long run. Okay, so eventually what happens is we end up getting to this face right here, and you can see immediately if you compare the two, hey, oh my gosh, it's so nice. But the sad part is that this is after I took my break. This may have even been the next day when I woke up, and I'm working on this in the morning. I had a fresh mind, I had everything set up, and I had a moment to remove myself from the frame. And this is what I want to tell you guys about, okay? This is something that I really want to drive home, is I want you guys to imagine that when you're in this moment where you feel like you're like forcing things to happen, you're trying to solve these problems with, say, rendering your character's face. This is usually when it happens for me, is when I'm rendering a character's face, and you spend too much time in the frame with the piece. I want you guys to imagine, it's like you can't see the big picture when you are in that zone. That's the danger of being in the zone. And a lot of people refer to being in the zone as the best place ever, but unfortunately, it can be a very dangerous place, because it can kind of get you sucked into it, and it can lead to that sunk cost bias, or that sunk time bias of saying, no, but I've been in the zone for like 3 to 4 hours and I've been doing so much work. Man, if I just plow through this, if I just power through this just a little bit longer, I can make it look good, right? And then you end up wasting more and more time. Whereas what I did here was I said, you know what? I'm giving up. I'm giving up on trying to make this face look right. I'm starting over again. And then I got to this face, which is much more attractive and pleasing looking. I'm hoping you're agreeing with this. In about 30 to 45 minutes, I had like the baseline ready to go, and I could see how it was going to come together. And that's because I removed myself from the zone, removed myself from the canvas of Adobe Photoshop, took a look at the big picture, and I asked myself some very important questions. And those questions were, what is the main thing that I really feel is holding this picture back right now? And when I looked at it, I said, oh, you know what? Well, it's actually just the face and the hair. I feel like the face and the hair are not being rendered properly. They're not being treated properly. And I really just need to figure that out. Because the way that the armor looks, the way that Riven's body language looks, her hands look good. The lighting scheme, right? How the band of light is going across her arm and across her legs. I really like that. I think that those are really strong points of the piece that make it look dynamic and interesting. And really what I just need to focus on is just the face. So with that revelation, we did that, and we had a good night's rest. We gave up on the piece. We pushed it away. We started a new one. We started the Mika piece, and that's something that I want to talk about right now. So let's go to the Mika piece. Here we go. Okay, so let's talk about Mika. Mika. Okay, cool. So the reason why I wanted to do this piece was for 2 reasons. One, to get my mind off of, right, to get this thought out of my mind and onto the canvas. Let me go ahead and zoom out so you guys can see exactly what this is all about, okay? So right here, you can see that what I did was, let's go ahead and take away all these masks and everything. And you can see here that actually what I was working with was a very simple line art setup. And the reason why I wanted to do this, and why I'll probably be doing a few more pieces like this, is because I feel like I rely a little bit too much on line art in the beginning, especially for faces. You know, like I'm putting the two together, comparing them, trying to capture that same feeling. Whereas what I really admire in other artists is their ability to almost sculpt the faces in a later stage, in the overpainting stage. So what I did here was a little bit of an experiment, and that was light line art, right? Putting in even like some crappy manual masks, like really messy, right? But my colors I've chosen here. The colors that I've chosen, I can say, oh, okay, this is a very nice representation of the skin. Also lighting from a weird angle. I'm always used to lighting things from a frontal ambient light. So trying out a new lighting scheme. And then from there, adding on, see, these overpaints, and then doing a little bit of liquefy action to kind of change up the proportions of the face. And then eventually we get to this point. I'm like, oh, see, I do know what I'm doing. And this gave me a burst of confidence, not only because I was able to light this face from a different angle, but also because I got this thought out of my mind and onto paper. So I'm really happy with this. Really happy with that Mika piece. Again, this was just kind of like an exercise. But I want to stress this to you guys because you may be running into the same problem whenever you're trying to render something. Whenever you're in there, you're in the thick of battle, right? You're on the canvas. You're splattered across the canvas with Riven in this Shurima desert as she's being exiled from Noxus. And you're stuck there, right? You're stuck there, and you have this other thing that you need to get out. I would highly recommend that you take that. You take that intuition, follow that intuition, do the piece, right? Take a break, give up on this one for just a moment. And what I like to call this is a catalyst. It's almost a catalyst piece that will help you get to where you're trying to go. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom in on this. And let's talk about the background, guys. Let's talk about the background. So the background was actually really fun because I had this idea in the very beginning, and for those of you who've been watching the series for a little bit, you know that at the very start of this piece, there was like a rock or some sort of like element that was going to be right behind Riven's head. And that was going to serve as the reason why that shadow is basically going across her body. Because it's like, okay, she's in the desert. Was there like a palm tree or like a rock or something? But then I thought, hey, you know what? It's actually really easy. Just because there's a shadow going across Riven's body here doesn't mean we have to necessarily show it. We don't need to show it there because I liked this open negative space that was on the backside of Riven's head. I didn't want to lose that. So an idea that I had was, hey, you know, she's crossing the desert. Maybe what she's doing is she's passing through the ruins of a city that the Noxians had ravaged, right? And then she's thinking about, you know, her past and the things that she's been a part of, right? And she's sitting and contemplating. And then also, but more importantly, the structures are there to justify, hey, there's probably like, if there's structures back there, there's probably something right next to her that would be casting a shadow, right? Casting a shadow over her. And it really helped to pull the piece together, add a little bit of narrative in there, a little bit of story. And I was really happy with how it turned out. So always be considering that as well. Not just the narrative, but more importantly, the reasons why the lighting scheme is set up in the way that it is. Now I'm going in there and I'm adding in some blur. I'm adding in my final effects, the photo filters, the Instagrammy stuff, just to kind of finalize the piece. And we'll be going through that in just a moment. We'll go through the layers and kind of click them on and off. And then we're going to go ahead and end today's show. So I hope you guys have learned a little bit more about that. No, there's not so much of a live tutorial today, more so just finishing touches and time lapses, but the main point that I wanted to tell you guys about is to understand that those thoughts of like inadequacy, those thoughts of like, oh man, what the heck am I doing? I must be losing it. It happens to everybody. It happens to all artists. And the best thing that you can do is understand that the best thing to do in those points is to give it up. Give up the piece for the time being. Take a break. Go to sleep, right? At the end of the day, go to sleep. Come back the next day when your eyes are fresh. If you have an idea in the back of your mind, get that sketch or that idea down onto the canvas. Get it out, right? Because you need all of your energy, especially when you're working on something with you're trying to like render something or execute a piece with elements that you've never done before. You can't have your mind being pulled in another direction. So get that stuff out. Get that mind clear. Come back to it. And then you'll be amazed at how oftentimes the solution comes together in a matter of minutes. After you have spent 5 hours trying to like force it to work, you take a break, come back in just a moment, and then the solution is right in front of your eyes. So With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and dissect a few of these layers, ladies and gentlemen, and then we're going to end. Okay, so let's talk about a couple things that I can tell you guys about my layers that will help you out. Let's see here. One thing that I find that really helps at the end is adding little multiply layers to things. Oftentimes I find that I make my pieces too bright. Let me see if I can find a good example here. So if I turn this off, is that one too bright? No, let's go back a little bit further. Okay, here we go. So the difference is between this and this. You see how I've brought the values down a lot? That's not me going back in there and repainting everything. It's actually just me laying on multiply layers, like this one down here. This one's just very subtle. And what I ended up doing was I ended up like flattening these pieces, but you can see just turning this on and off. It allows you to kind of like fine tune the adjustment of the levels, allowing your silhouettes to come through, right? Because we're looking at the difference in the contrast between the background and the hair. And if it's too light, like it was before, right? If it's too light like this, see how when you squint your eyes, the values of this hair and then the background, not quite the same. Now keep your eyes squinted, I'm watching you. Turn on this and now see how that color or that shape comes through so much more clear. Multiply layers are always handy for that stuff. Let's talk about the background, because the background actually underwent probably the biggest changes here. And that is that we first of all put in our buildings, but then what we ended up doing is we flattened down the entire layer and then we blurred it. Do you see how just going from this to this? And that's just as simple as flattening your layer. Notice how I kept the original group back here in case I needed to go back and change it. But here, there you go. Here's your live tutorial for the day. How to blur things. Sure, it's not the most amazing thing in the world, but hey, it's something. Okay, so the way that I blurred it is I just collapsed it all down into one layer. Went to filter, blur, and then the type of blur that I used here was called a Gaussian blur. Gaussian blur. Gaussian. Godzilla blur. Okay, and then you just kind of use this here, right? Your radius is going to adjust how much out of blur your background is, right? And then also, I think I did like an exposure on it, a little bit of exposure. So that is also done in image adjustments. And then I actually just recently found out about this. I find that exposure actually works really well. I really like exposure over what I would usually use, and that is brightness contrast. But I found exposure works really well because you can do stuff like this. It simulates a little bit better like what a camera would do. And so I did something kind of like this. I think that's exactly what it is. So I turned up the gamma correction and exposure up just a tad bit. And that gave us a little bit more of a brighter feeling background. Like see how it brightens up these lights back here and darkens the shadows? This gives us an even more, a greater feeling that we are in this really, really bright, hot desert, right? And we like that stuff. We like it a lot. Okay, so that's how I executed that background. Okay, last but not least, let's go ahead and move into the filter. Because as you can see here, the filter really helps to kind of lighten up. Like let's take a look here at what it's actually doing. So the filter is taking our values all just slightly lighter, and it is unifying our piece. It is unifying specifically the shadows of the piece, because see how dark they get in here? It's like going straight to black and everything. How come that is not working? Okay, there we go. Yeah, see how they're like all very, very close to black? I wanted to like unify all those things and just kind of give it a little bit more of a coolness to the shadows, while leaving the bright parts very, very warm. So kind of having that nice contrast of the warm light and cool shadows. I wanted it to feel like Riven is, seeking out this shade just because, it's cooler there. Okay, so now, and then that is executed or achieved with this filter. There is a brightness contrast filter, and you can go ahead and take a look at this. Oh, and if you want to see these for yourself, don't worry, the PSD is going to be available for download at the very end. But I'll get to that in just a moment. Okay, so brightness contrast, see here, this is actually on the entire piece. On the entire piece, I did it here. And then this gradient map right here is actually our filter. And the gradient map, what it's doing is it's kind of cutting out areas where I didn't want it to exist. Because see, as I turn this up to 100, see how, it actually gets more like Instagram-y looking the more you do it, but I'm a fan of subtlety, right? So something like right around, I think it was like 40 or something like that, 40%. That's how I did that. Oh, but most importantly, let me show you guys what the actual thing looks like. Let me show you what this actual thing looks like. It's a gradient map. And it looks like this. I always use this one. It should be one that came with your Photoshop, and that is basically one that goes blue and orange, blue and orange. And but let me show you how I even started this. Okay, let me show you how I actually started this. Okay, another cool tutorial for you. Okay, so the way that you apply a gradient map is you're going to go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Gradient Map. Okay, and you hit OK, and then look, whoa, awesome. So you click this little gradient bar right next to me, and then you're going to select this one. I find that this one works really, really well. This blue and orange one. Now you might be asking me, what the heck does this do? Well, you're in luck because, oh, here, let me move this up so that way you can actually see what's happening. Okay, so what this is doing is it is taking your values. It's saying, okay, your darkest values are going to be blue and your lighter values are going to be orange. Now what this means is that as you go through your layer styles, right? So as we move through these layer styles, it's going to begin affecting the piece in different ways, right? But the most prominent thing that you're going to notice is it's going to turn your shadows cool and it's going to make your lights bright. See? And each of these things, I'm just cycling through all these layer styles, and then you'll notice that it's changing the piece in different ways, and it's unifying your colors in different ways. So it's really fun to experiment with this stuff. I really like it a lot. And then you can, just like Instagram, hey, look at that. You guys know how to use that. The opacity filter is right over here. So you can like turn it down, turn it up. And then each of these things will give you a different filter, a different look for what you're going for. And I think I ended up using something called exclusion. Again, not because I'm like really smart and know what that means. I just like the way that it looked, and I like the way that it kind of affected the piece. So we ended up going with that. And we had a lot of fun. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and move into some question catapults. And I'm not going to mute myself. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, time for some questions coming in. Alright, this one is coming from XYGen, and it is a great question. And it's crafted in such a fun way. We get to like move this over to discover the story, right? Choose your own adventure. Alright, so XYGen is asking, hi there, currently in my 3rd year in high school. To be honest, right now, I'm really stressed out on what to do when I get out of this place. My mom is a radiologist. She works at X-ray and all that. She told me it's a very stable job. Yes, I have heard that as well. Medical field is a very good place with decent pay. Not at all against doing work like this. In fact, peaceful and stable stuff is what I like about the job. Job required 3 to 5 years of training, so it isn't that long either. And then we move on to say, however, my passion is art. My passion, I have these ideas that I want to get out into the world and I want to share it. I want to share it with everyone. And I know that if I do that, the world is going to love me back, right? And I will find peace and I'll find happiness and all that stuff. And so they're asking about, okay, should I go for the stable job or the dream job first? And XYGen, I have a very good answer for you. And that is, the younger you are, the crazier you should be. The crazier you should be. The more risks you should take, right? 3rd year of high school is not a time to be looking for something that is stable. You're not looking for something safe. You're looking for something crazy, right? And the reason why, I mean, a lot of you probably didn't see me going for that, huh? You're probably thinking me saying something like, oh yeah, you should definitely go for that stable job, yeah, because you know somebody in the industry, you know, your mom could probably help you out getting that job and everything, and it'll be really nice and safe. And I say, no, screw that, man. You don't need that. Right now, you are young, and it is time to make mistakes. It is time to find out, right? Because here's the scenario that happens, right? People go for the stable job. People do that stuff, and then they become the radiologist. Or they go and, like, my father actually is very similar to this. He decided that he wanted to, like him and all his friends, they had like this stable job of going and working in the movie industry, right? Working for Warner Brothers Entertainment. And he was a set designer and a prop builder for movies. It was a really cool thing. Like, I loved going to the movie sets to like see the things that he was working on. A couple movies that he's worked on are like Mars Attacks, Alien Resurrection, Independence Day. That was a really cool one to go see. But all the while, he had another set of friends that decided that they were going to pursue art. And my dad also wanted to be an artist. He was very talented, and he still is. He's a very amazing sculptor. And he was able to use that. He was able to use that in his job, don't get me wrong. But all the time that he was doing this, he always had the thought in the back of his mind of like, oh man, what would have happened if I would have pursued that? What would have happened if I took that chance to try to become more of an artist and express myself? But the problem is that after the 3 to 5 years of you being out of high school, you're going to be 24, 25, right? And, or more like 23. But but the problem is that the time that you have to take major chances and make huge mistakes and bounce back from them gets exponentially harder the more you grow, the older that you get. Because think about it, you're going to be getting married maybe eventually, possibly having kids. Just like, and it's not just about like marriage and kids. It's just about like the level of responsibility that you're going to have. Maybe buying a house, you know, things that are going to require much more of your dedication as you get older. And so the best thing to do while you're young, that's why I say, figure out if you can do what you really want to do. See if you even have a chance. Ask yourself, okay, look, because here's the other thing that may happen is you may do the stable job and you think, oh man, what if I ever tried that, right? What if I would have ever just like stuck with that art thing? Maybe I could have been doing something that I really love. Maybe not getting paid as much, but I would love every day, right? I would love every day waking up doing something that I like. And here's the thing. If you do that right now, if you take that chance and you say, yeah, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna go for art right now. And then you do that. You do take that chance and you do it for maybe a couple of years. And then you say, you finally realize that point where you're like, you know what? I realize now that this was always just meant to be a hobby. This was always something that was, I felt like I was super passionate about it, right? And a good example is me. A good example is me and the comic, right? You guys remember when I quit my job at Riot to start the comic. And I was so passionate about that. I was so dang passionate about that. And then eventually I got to the point where I was like, you know what? I feel like I should be passionate about this. I felt like I made a promise to myself that I needed to finish it. And I felt bad for not following through, right? But the truth is that I did follow through. I did. My goal was to make a comic, and I did. I didn't need to necessarily finish it. I mean, I'd like to finish it, but right now, it's just like, there's so many things that are on my plate. I need to understand that there's trade-offs. There's trade-offs. I can't have everything. It's like, yeah, it's easy for me to say, yeah, I want to have a stable job, and yeah, I want to be able to go travel to these places, and I want to go do cons, and I want to go meet people, and I want to go experience things. Oh yeah, but that thing, and that's going to take a lot of time and resources. But, oh yeah, that thing with my comic, I need a lot of time on that too, right? So I need to also quit my job. So I want to do that. And you see how like more and more things keep piling up, and you have to realize that you can't do them all. You can't do them all. So really what I was getting to with that XYGen was that, yes, you should do that now. You should pursue your dream. Do the passionate stuff first, because you'll very quickly realize if it's going to be right for you. If it's going to be right for you. And then if you realize, hey, you know what? I think this was always just meant to be, this is something that just needed to get out of me. I needed to create a few pieces. I needed to do this for a few years. Now I understand that, you know what, I actually do like the idea of just having that more secure job. I like the security. I like the safety. And the work is fairly challenging to me, and it's good. It's good. It's a nice balance. And that's what I'm going for, is that you want to try to find that balance in your life. Okay? Or you might be doing your artwork and you realize that this is exactly what your calling is. And then you'll thank yourself every day that you did it. You'll thank yourself every day that you took that chance. Okay? So, okay, that is my advice to you, XYGen. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. Anybody else who's having a similar issue to XYGen? I know a lot of you guys are having that same thoughts. And that is, when you're young, be freaking crazy. Be crazy. Do some crazy crap. And you'll be happy later. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, I'd like to say that if you want to get today's PSD, head on over to Patreon, click right here. You can go follow the link, download not only today's PSD, but all the other PSDs, because you know what? You shouldn't be taking my word for this. This could be all faked. I could have downloaded this off Google. You should go in there and see that I actually painted every single one of these layers. Okay, so go do that. Go do that and download it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, we're going to say thank you to our amazing sponsors. Laura, but where's the sound? Why is it muted? There we go. Laura Bashir, David Cariello, Marvin Sayo, Matthew Silva, Ilian the Cat, wrong button, Ilian the Cat, Megan Gwynn, and Ian Crowell. Thank you guys so much for sponsoring the show, keeping the lights running at night. Sponsors of the past, thank you guys so much. And thank you to all of you out there for watching the show and allowing me to keep doing what I'm doing. I really do appreciate it. Thumbs up if you like it. Thumbs down if you don't. My name is Ken Lafferty. I'll see you guys next week. And until then, you guys take care. See ya. And fade to black.